Hey Emma,
Yes, Madelyn.
did you hear what they're gonna call the new horror game about Tigger from Winnie the Pooh?
No, what are they going to call it?
The Bouncer! Hello and welcome to Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
I'm your bouncy host, Madelyn.
Oh my gosh. I'm your host, Emma.
What?
I don't know.
Giving up on me. It's not the strongest joke to start off 2022. But thanks for tuning into the show, folks. This week, you might have picked up, we're going to be talking about The Bouncer as our old game. And we're going to be talking about Mundaun, which is a horror game, hence the horror element from the beginning, for our new game.
Very exciting.
Horrific in many different ways.
In many different ways, yes.
So, are you ready to bounce?
I'm ready to bounce.
Great, and we're done. See you, listeners.
Let's get bouncing.
So we'll start off with The Bouncer, a year 2000 beat 'em up for the PlayStation 2, developed by Squaresoft, not yet Enix, and Dream Factory.
Yes.
Why haven't I heard of The Bouncer, Emma?
I don't know why you haven't heard of The Bouncer. It's such a meme.
Is it?
Maybe I'm just online more than you. I don't know.
Emma's very online.
I'm not very online.
Emma's semi-online.
I'm semi-online. In the video game sphere.
Yeah.
The video game Square Enix sphere.
Squaresoft. Enix not involved.
Yeah, but Twitter isn't talking about Squaresoft anymore.
What if they were? What if they decided in 2022 that they were going to just go, everyone was going to call them Squaresoft, refuse to acknowledge Enix?
That'd be mysterious.
It would be mysterious. Anyway, The Bouncer. I can't believe we haven't talked about it on this show yet, because of course it involves Talk This, King designer, Tetsuya Nomura, produced by Hashimoto of Kingdom Hearts Elevator Pitch fame, as well as the folks at Dream Factory who make more beat-em-up fighting type games.
Yes.
Square really used to make a lot of different kinds of games, huh?
And yet they're all kind of RPGs.
Sort of.
What distinguishes The Bouncer from other beat-em-ups is, one, the story's pretty front and center, unlike in a lot of beat-em-ups.
Yeah.
And two, between each fight you get your bouncer points, your BP, if you would.
Right.
That you can put either
you
can either allocate to your stats or use to learn new moves that you can use in the beat-em-up portion.
New bounces.
Yes. Anyway, The Bouncer's about multiple bouncers who do, in fact, not do any bouncer work over the course of this game.
Who is the one true bouncer in this trio?
Well, it's probably, what's his name, Scion?
Yeah.
It's probably Scion.
I guess so.
He's on the cover.
I'd like it to be confirmed. Is he the bouncer, or is someone else the bouncer? Or is
Scion.
the bouncer just a spirit that...
Some sort of beta design for Sora that Nomura was like, okay, you can use this.
Well, the bouncer is really all just one big beta test, right? It's how
I guess so.
Some retrospectives talk about it that way anyway. Not that anyone from Square has come out and said that, but a lot of talk in the kind of like looking back on it, retrospective reviews. It's like, oh, like this was clearly them just figuring out how the PS2 worked before they launched their really big titles.
People were very hyped for The Bouncer before it came out, though.
I know.
I think it was like one of their debut titles for the PS2.
It was their debut title for the PS2. And in the golden age of Square, no less.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So probably you're thinking out there, folks, why haven't I heard of The Bouncer? Why hasn't it been in Kingdom Hearts yet? Sort of has been. Dog Street.
Yeah.
Makes an appearance.
Yes.
But you haven't heard of it because it was a bit of a flop. Which, there are fewer big flops like this.
I don't know. Square Enix, like, remember they released The Quiet Man?
So The Quiet Man I would not have remembered, except a bunch of reviews were like, The Quiet Man kind of picks this up. The Quiet Man was only published by Square Enix, though.
That's true. Yeah.
So there's a degree of separation. It's just interesting to me. I don't know. Maybe it's because we're like scraping the bottom of the barrel with our old games a little bit. That's not true. It's about to be 2020. It's 2022.
Also, we're not. The Bouncer, it's not scraping the bottom of the barrel. I didn't know it was so not known. It just established itself a place in my brain.
I guess what I meant was that we're starting to talk about more old games that aren't so much classics or even necessarily cult classics as
I think you could
interesting
say
pieces of gaming history.
I think you could say The Bouncer is in some ways a cult classic.
I guess so. It's hard to refer to something as a cult classic that released only for the PS2 and never anywhere else, though.
Isn't that what makes it a cult classic?
I guess so, but I now associate cult classic with, like, it's re-released and now people are reevaluating it.
But like with movies, there's like old bad movies that you could call cult classics, right?
That's also true, but that's also less and less a thing now.
Yeah, but that's how I feel about The Bouncer. It falls in that
You're right. It does sort of fall in the category of an old sort of bad movie because that is basically what the game is.
Yeah.
So in this, as Emma said, you play as not just one, but 3 bouncers at Fate Bar in the city of Edge, who promptly abandon their bouncing duties when their pal Dominique, who is a girl, is captured by members of the Mikado Group, which is a solar tech company owned by Daragon C. Mikado.
Yeah.
Big names in this game. And so they abandon being bouncers and they go bounce around the city instead, trying to save Dominique. Beating him up along the way.
Yes. So playing through the game itself is only about 2 hours, but before each fight you pick a character to play as in that fight, so either Scion, Ko, or Volt are our 3 bouncers. And depending on who you pick, you're sort of seeing it through their perspectives. You get like different information or see different things in a different light, depending on which character you've picked. And then I believe there are very slight alterations depending on certain things you do over the course of that campaign.
Yeah.
To each of their like character endings, I guess.
Yeah, it's not so much, from what I've read, it's not so much that the story changes dramatically, although there are some semi-major changes, at least with regards to like one of the antagonist characters, but it's more that you see different portions of it. Even in the endings you kind of see different portions. It's not that it changes dramatically, it's just you get to see different things.
Yes.
Which is, I feel like, a very early 2000s way of doing branching endings.
Yeah.
But yeah, only runs about 2 hours per playthrough, and you'd better like the game if you're going to do another playthrough.
Well, there is also, you can do New Game Plus where you carry over all of your stats, which does make it a little bit easier, but there are certain quirks to the combat that make it odd to play, even if you're really strong.
Yeah. So there's a lot of, classic Square Enix twists and turns to the plot here. So let's do Madelyn's lore corner just a little bit.
Sure.
I won't pretend to have understood all of this, but I'll do my best. So yeah, so Scion, Ko, and Volt are the bouncers at Fate. And they've all kind of ended up there after some bad stuff went down in their lives. Scion had a friend who was interning at the Mikado Company, which is like a huge conglomerate, and who died. So interning is bad. That's the big takeaway there.
True.
Ko is really an anti-Mikado secret agent, which is kind of wild. And Volt, you learn partway through, used to be Mikado's top bodyguard for Daragon's dad, Mikado Sr. But then he got framed for Mikado Sr.'s death, and so he had to flee. And Dominique, spoilers for a game that is more than 20 years old and that you cannot play unless you have it on PS2 and have a TV that you can plug PS2 into. So, be warned. You discover about partway through that Dominique, who you've previously known as just like a girl who hung out with you all at the bar, you find out that she's actually an android modeled on Daragon's dead sister, who died due to some kind of, like, the hospital was full, social services gap. which is maybe very relatable.
Yeah.
Right now, who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Still though, it's like this guy's very wealthy. They don't have a private doctor. There's a plot hole there. Anyway, so he's so angry about that. He's built an android version of her, I guess, and he's gonna destroy the city as revenge for her death. But fortunately, our trio is able to go up into space, sure, and stop him even when he reveals his evil overalls and save Dominique. The end.
Yeah.
Action thriller.
Well, it's pretty, sci-fi. It's not that wild.
It's not that wild. The overalls are pretty wild. I don't know if you've seen the picture of that.
Fair.
So the
That's
Sephiroth with overalls look.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just like I'm just thinking about like, in 2 hours you meet these characters and then one of them is a spy and one of them is a former whatever. I realize it's all kind of tropey, but when you read it, it sounds a little more ridiculous than I'm sure that it actually plays as.
I'm sure it plays ridiculous. I'm just saying there's a lot of movies that are at that level as well.
That's true. That's very right. I'm just saying like, Nomura. Not that he had anything to do with the story here.
Yeah.
Just had anything to do with the zippers and the overalls, I guess.
I do like the big, like, huge, like, is it an X? Or am I just imagining that necklace that Scion wears?
Maybe. None of them wear shirts. No. That's probably an important thing to mention, that to be a bouncer, the most you can wear is like half an unbuttoned shirt.
Yeah.
That's about it. I read a contemporary interview with some of the design team, and so I do want to say that they asked Nomura where the inspiration for the character design came from. Also threw in there that like apparently there was a rumor that Squall was from Final Fantasy VIII was based on Nomura, which is very funny.
That's wild.
He was like, no, it was River Phoenix. Nobody got it. Nice try, Tetsuya. But he says he didn't have any inspiration of them. They weren't based on real people. I have to say this because people will start rumors otherwise.
That's funny.
So if you're out there and you feel like if you were a bouncer, I don't know which Square Enix studio he would have been working at that point, but if you were a bouncer in the late 90s and you feel like this was your outfit, probably it was based on you and they just couldn't say it.
I don't know. I think all of the designs for the bouncer fall very well within, like, 2000s era Nomura designs.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, Scion really does look like a beta Sora.
Absolutely. Older Sora.
Whichever one wears leather jacket reminds me a little bit of Leon's design in Kingdom Hearts. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they're not outside of what you would associate with Nomura of the time, I would say.
No, totally. I don't mean to say that. I'm just like, this is what bouncers look like.
Yeah. I assume that's what bouncers look like, yeah.
The other gem from that interview was that the director, Takashi Tokita, answered the question, how much research was done at local bars, and is that research going on still today? And he says, that is my daily pursuit.
You gotta hit up those local bars, you know?
Yeah.
For research.
Just for research.
Yeah.
Figure out how bouncers act.
Yeah. That's what I assume.
But Emma's absolutely right to mention earlier that the Bouncer was maybe one of the most hyped games. I don't want to say of all time, right? But it was a very hyped game heading into the PS2 era.
Well, it looked really good.
That's true.
Leaping, the graphical leap from the PS1 to the PS2 was a pretty significant one, I believe. Especially in comparison to our more modern leaps that we see today. And so they're showing the Bouncer, you know. Square Enix has always done, like, you know, especially from the PS2 era on, like, lovely cutscenes, right? For whatever time that is. Like, you look at footage of the Bouncer today, and they're still eye-catching, even though you can tell that they're from the PS2. 2000. Yeah. What was I saying?
Cutscenes.
Yes. And it also runs at 60 FPS.
But is there ray tracing?
No, there's no ray tracing. Also, it's probably like 480p or something like that. I was reading a little bit about this, and like some sort of thread where people were like, I'm surprised how many PS2 games were like at 60 FPS, and someone was like, well, it's easier to do that if the resolution isn't as That's why we have like performance versus visual mode, because it has to prioritize one of those things. And also ragdoll physics.
Gotta have the ragdoll physics.
Which is one of those quirks of combat that is a little bit odd. So, like, you get hit by something, you sort of ragdoll, and then once you're on the ground, you take more damage if you're hit on the ground. But because of the ragdoll physics, you're sort of ragdolling around on the ground for a little bit. And also, if one of the other bouncers hits you, one of your party members, that also does more damage. So you can get into situations where, like, both of you, like, ragdoll into each other,
off each other,
and then you're dead.
So that's the real meaning of the bouncer.
Yeah.
It's really a reference to the ragdoll physics.
Yes, I think so.
Ragdoll physics is really a requirement for beat 'em ups, though, isn't it?
I guess so. But when you're ragdolling in Yakuza, you don't take damage to other people.
That's true.
As much, I think.
That's fair. I won't say that the damage element of it was required, but I do feel like, even though it is pretty ridiculous, it is sort of a staple of the genre in a way that's like, okay, you gotta have some light ragdoll physics no matter what.
Sure. It did also not have a retry button, so if you lost, you would have to reload. And also had this quirk where you'd have like long cutscenes in between the beat 'em ups, right? Because it's sort of like this
playable action
movie experience. But instead of like cutscenes being one long cutscene that you skip, you have to skip each one. They're like breaking into like 5 or 6 chunks. At least you
could skip them.
That's true. At least you could skip them. But I was watching someone like skip through like after like the first boss, and it's like, you skip, you, like, wait, like, 3 seconds, it loads the next scene. You skip it, you wait, like, 3 seconds, it loads the next scene. And I can see how that would get a little bit, like, oh, boy. I wish I could have just pressed retry, you know?
Yeah. One of the reviews... So, the Bouncer did not do super well, right? It was very, very hyped because it looked very beautiful. And that is the thing that they basically succeeded at in this game, that it definitely showed off the tactical capabilities of the PS2, and the reason that so many of these reviews look back, and I'm sure this is not the case, but so many of these backwards looking reviews are like, it's just Square not screwing around exactly, but like screwing around with the PS2 before they do Final Fantasy 7, I'm sorry, not 7, Final Fantasy 10 and Kingdom Hearts, and figuring out their graphics engine and that kind of thing. And you know, obviously they would not have hyped it to this degree if that was what it was. But you can see what they're getting at here, because this game is very beautiful, but the camera is not very beautiful for now, but very beautiful for 2000.
Yes.
But the camera's a mess, and the gameplay isn't like that great, the story isn't like that great. So it was not well reviewed, did not sell well, and that's why we've never seen another Bouncer.
Yeah. There's also an issue, like, they have this progression system, right? But if you're someone who's like, ooh, exciting new moves, and you spend all your points on all the new moves first, you're probably going to get to a point where you're stuck.
Yeah.
Because if you're not leveling your stats to a certain level, you'll won't be able to get past certain boss fights, and there's no way to reallocate your points.
And there's no grinding possibilities either.
Yes, and there's no grinding possibilities, so you would just have to restart the game, which I can also see how that would be frustrating.
Absolutely. It did strike me, though, seeing a couple of reviews where a lot of the reviews where the complaint was, it's too short, which, I don't know. Has that fallen, is that the more things change, the more they stay the same? Or is that times have changed?
I think that's the more things change, the more they stay the same.
I think it's different with reviewers now, though.
That's true.
I think that the video game reviewing class is now like, yes, give me a short game, please.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Twitter class,
yes,
less so. But some of them that were like, if you skip all the cutscenes, it's only about 45 minutes. It's like, imagine saying that in a review in 2021, 2022.
Yeah.
If you skip all the cutscenes, it's only 45 minutes. Like, get out of town.
Yeah.
This game is a playable movie.
Yeah.
It's fair to say it's pretty short for a game that was this hyped. I'm just like, how dare, imagine just, showing your own not ignorance, but, showing your own lack of engagement like that, being like, I just wanted to do the beat 'em up in this game that has clearly been marketed as an action movie.
Yeah.
to the year 2000. There's one other quote from one of these interviews that I wanted to get your opinion on. Is the typical age-old rule of the 3-person group that you have to have an orthodox member, a cool one, and a comical one?
Well, I think that's true in Kingdom Hearts.
Who is the cool one?
Riku.
Oh, I was thinking of Sora, Donald, and Goofy.
Oh, true. Goofy.
Goofy is not the cool one.
See, it's interesting because Sora is a different role depending on whether you're Sora, Riku, and Kairi or Sora, Donald, and Goofy.
Right.
He's the orthodox one in Sora, Donald, and Goofy. He's the comical one in Sora, Riku, and Kairi.
I don't know if I agree.
I think Kairi is the orthodox one.
No. I don't know if I agree about Sora, Donald, and Goofy.
Is Goofy the orthodox one?
Maybe. I don't know who
Donald's the cool one?
I don't think there's a cool one in that group.
I think Donald's the cool one.
No, I was gonna say Donald.
He's
is
sort
the
of grumpy,
one.
you know? That's true. He is sort of grumpy and like...
But that makes Goofy
Stop
the cool
mispronouncing
one.
things, Goofy.
That makes Goofy cool, which is not right.
What is Goofy's so cool?
He is. I don't mean to knock Goofy. I just mean to say... You know. It's tough. It's making me go back and think about all the trio games and be like, is there an orthodox one, a funny one, and a cool one?
I think that's a good basic idea, though.
It's a good principle of narrative design.
Yeah.
Game design.
Yeah.
Their team attack in this game is called Trinity Rush, by the way.
That's just the name, the 3 name.
I'm just saying, when Kingdom Hearts 4 is Sora meets his older counterpart in the Bouncer.
I would be down for Sora goes to the Bouncer world. I think that would be very fun and funny.
No, it'd be more fun for somebody else to, like, Riku should go to the Bouncer world.
Says the Bouncer world. Okay, I'm down for the Bouncer world.
You're right.
All right? They can do something with that.
Do you think they'll ever bring back the Bouncer?
Probably not. No.
Why not?
I don't know if Dream Factory is really around anymore.
Yeah, they don't seem to have produced anything in the past 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. And I don't know why they would. How about that?
I mean, Nomura's
I think
busy,
there is
right?
more demand for some of their other series than there is for the Bouncer. Did you say Nomura's not busy?
I did say that.
That's very funny.
Even in the interview, like the other quote from this interview, they asked him, like, how long did it take you to design these? He was like, about a year, but I'm always working on, like, a bunch of other things at once.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, you need to get a family or something. I don't know.
No, his family is his character designs.
You're right. Well, that's too bad. And not that anyone is really clamoring for the Bouncer, but I would be interested to play. Like, I wish they would at least... I don't know, maybe Spartacus will bring it back.
True, yeah.
I'm really betting a lot on Spartacus having team buddies on it.
True, yeah.
And the Bouncer.
The 2 most requested games, I'm sure.
I'm sure. Well, are you ready to get horrific?
Sure, yeah. Let's talk about Mundaun.
Mundaun is a 2021 FPH game. First-person horror.
Did you coin that?
I did.
Okay.
I did.
Okay.
Why? It's not something you've heard people say?
No.
FPH.
No.
Sounds a little bit like a Neil Patrick Harris.
It does. He is also a first-person horror game, I assume.
What a rude thing to say. Anyway, it's from Swiss devs Hidden Fields, which is mostly Michelle Ziegler.
Yes. It was a solo project, like, right up until the very end when he brought people on, I think, to help him finish it, basically.
Presumably, if you're bringing people on at the end, they're helping you finish it, yes.
Yes, but I just mean, like, he's like, I need help to finish this.
Yeah.
It was originally supposed to come out in 2019.
And then it did not.
It did not.
So in Mundaun, he plays Curdin, who's a dude, returning to his grandfather's hometown in the Alps when he gets a letter... or because he gets a letter that his grandfather has died in a barn fire, and there's no need to come for the funeral because he's already been buried. Which is suspicious letter to get. So he comes to this, like, small town in the Alps, and he's been told his grandfather's already been buried, but when he's looking around at the barn, he gets sucked into a funky painting.
Of the barn
of
burning.
the barn burning, sees it burning, finds his grandfather's toasty corpse.
Yes.
And then a mystery begins.
Yes.
The town is called Mundaun. I don't know if I said that. That's Mundaun, which is a real town, apparently.
Yes, I believe so.
Probably not actually drawn in pencil, though.
The game?
No, the town of Mundaun.
Yeah. I was like, I think it is, sort of. Yeah. I watched, like, the publisher, MWM is the publisher, had, like, a 16-minute video on, like, the making of Mundaun, which mostly just followed Michelle Ziegler around, like, the Swiss countryside or whatever, as he, like, drew things. Apparently he's just, like, always drawing. Just, like...
Apparently.
He pulled out, like, thousands of books of, like, things that he's drawn for this project. Apparently he was originally thinking of it as a comic, and then he downloaded some game engines and had fun with them. And was like, make this a game.
Danger.
Yeah. And then there's the challenge of having to figure out how to move everything from paper and pencil into the game. He also talked a little bit about some of his programming things. There's an avalanche in the game, apparently, and how it is there's, like, an invisible ball that is in it that just sort of pulls the avalanche down with it.
It's funny.
And he was saying, like, I don't think this is, like, I think this is not...
This is good design.
I don't know. He's like, you can't just, like, Google this, really. So I thought that was funny.
That is very funny. How to do an avalanche.
Yeah, the quirks of being a one-person...
Yeah, self-taught.
Yeah, making this game.
So yeah, as you may have picked up, Mundaun has this hand-drawn style, which obviously is very trendy in the kind of indie space.
This is a little different from what is trendy.
Sure, you're absolutely right. So this does not necessarily look like the hand-drawn, cozy aesthetic. But whenever I see that, I'm like, okay, but, like, not really hand-drawn, right? Like, okay, like, you're using certain textures and certain style techniques. But Mundaun really literally is, like, this guy, you know, obviously because it's a 3D game, you can't just draw a mountain and slap it in. But it is literally him essentially drawing his textures. Yeah. And then scanning them in and then wrapping them onto objects. Yeah. Which is wild. Yeah.
He was pointing out on some of the characters, those, like, I'm pretty sure you can't see this because you don't get close enough to them, but you can, like, see little parts where it doesn't quite work right. Which, I don't know, that's just fun to see.
That adds to the horror aesthetic, I think.
Yeah.
It's definitely the kind of game where even if there are those little imperfections, you can kind of get away with it in the horror aesthetic. Remember when that side quest where I was like, there aren't really horror games? And then now we've talked about, like, 5 on the show since then. It's embarrassing for me.
It is. You should really be ashamed of yourself.
I am.
All of Mundaun is also in Romansh, which is, like, the 4th national language of Switzerland, mostly spoken by people who live in the Alps. In 2019, there were 40,000 speakers in Switzerland who speak this language. So it's a pretty uncommon one.
Do you think it's on Duolingo?
Could be.
Should I start learning Romansh?
You could understand Mundaun.
Wouldn't that be great? What a bold choice.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it really fits with, like, it's very, like, folkloric horror, right? So it sort of fits to pick this language that's more rural, I guess, to sort of fit the atmosphere.
It's interesting, except, I mean, I don't know. I guess, like, Mundaun did release pretty much on every modern and semi-modern platform in spring of 2021. To me, it's like like, you went out of your way for it to be Romansh. I don't know, I guess maybe they have translations in various languages, but it's like, I would not have known the difference between that and Swiss.
So?
But I'm just saying, like, it's an interesting choice, because for, like, 95%, probably more than that, right? 98% of players, it just sounds like It's like a kind of semi-Germanic sounding language.
Sure. It's apparently Latin-based, actually.
Semi-Latin sounding language.
I mean, he's Swiss, so I think he's Swiss.
Okay, that's fair.
So I imagine that plays into part of it.
You're right.
But he was also talking a little bit about in this video, just like how weird it is to put this out for people to play, which, you know, in that, like, when he first started making it, he wasn't even thinking about stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting too, of just like personal choices that were made, because he thought it would be cool more than anything.
Well, that just means, like, how do you find, like, I guess he probably knew someone who spoke the language. That's more what I was thinking. I was like, if I decided I wanted Romansh speaking in, like, anything I was working on, I don't know, I have the first idea of how I would find someone who is also a competent actor and speaks for, I guess it's a little easier if you're in Switzerland.
Yeah. Just put it up on a website, you know? The cast, there's like VO casting calls where you can like put up your role, must speak Romansh, and be a decent actor.
Yeah.
Probably get tons of responses, I'm sure.
It's true. I do feel like the horror game is one of the last bastions of the adventure game.
Yeah, because the part of, like, the horror experience is you not being very powerful, right? Mm-hmm. So that sort of, in a lot of ways, rules out combat as, like, a main way to interact with the game.
There is combat in Mundaun, to be fair.
Sure. Well,
you can avoid
it's optional combat, yes.
Sure.
But I was just speaking generally.
Right.
So you have to figure out some way for the player to interact with things, which I think brings back some of, like, the adventure. At least, like, picking up stuff, you know?
Well, picking up stuff and solving puzzles. That's kind of what I think of as the bread and butter of the adventure genre, and also kind of the bread and butter of at least some modern horror.
Yeah. I mean, even games where you have, like, that are more combat focused, mm-hmm. like Resident Evil, for instance, still have a pretty solid, like, puzzle base within them.
Yeah.
Even though those ones are more action-y horror, you know?
So you're saying Resident Evil is a walking simulator?
No. Not at all.
I'm just kidding. I did see that thrown around in some of the discussion of Mundaun, of, like, is it a walking simulator? It's just like, that's just a genre that needs to be retired.
Yeah.
The title, not games that are that, just the
title.
Just doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, it really doesn't. It's like, you do walking in every game. Not sure if you knew this, gamers. But there's some walking in most video games.
Not in driving games.
True.
The only non-walking simulator.
Forza Horizon 5. The anti-walking simulator.
It's interesting to me, obviously we talked a good bit about Game Pass last week. This feels like a game that would be sort of a natural Game Pass fit that's not on there.
Well, it's not a Microsoft exclusive, right?
True.
I imagine they want to leave it. It seems like a game that will make its way onto Game Pass eventually.
Right.
But most of the ones that are like day one Game Pass are the ones that are owned by Microsoft.
Okay, that makes sense then.
Yeah.
I don't understand business.
You want it to sell on the other systems, you know?
Who has an Xbox?
Some people.
Apparently. But I think Mundaun is most interesting in that. So this is the one I played just a bit of this week. I'll continue to play it, probably. It's not, like, super grabbing me. To start, the aesthetic is beautiful.
You have
in its
played
freaky way.
Not very much of it yet.
I recognize that I've only played about 30 minutes of it, but just the feel of the walking around of it.
Okay.
I
just said okay. I just said okay.
I'm not saying this as like a damning review of the game. I'm saying so far, in the start of it, I've started to get a feel of like, this is how moving around this world is gonna feel like, and I was like, okay.
I did think it was really funny at the beginning when you're on the bus and you're like, I can't move around.
I figured I should be able to walk around the bus.
On the moving bus.
Yeah.
And this is how I imagine Madeline, like, transports in New York. Like, on the train, on the bus, she's just, like, pacing back and forth. Because she needs to be moving.
Sometimes you have to get off to be near the door.
Sure. Not if you're the only person on the bus.
I guess so. Maybe especially then, so the driver doesn't forget that you're there.
Fair enough. But I guess you're not taking a bus to New York to, like, an old, rural, low population town.
You're right.
You know?
I'm not, typically, anyway.
Yeah.
But it is definitely a different genre of horror than your typical video game horror game. This kind of, like, folklore, rural story, which I think we've seen television explore some of in recent years. I'm thinking of True Detective, but also there have been, like, all of these other ones that I haven't watched, but that have seemed very folklore-y.
Yeah, I saw a few comparisons to, I cannot remember the director's name, but the guy who did The Witch and The Lighthouse sort of style.
Mm-hmm. So this is definitely not a visual language exactly, but a narrative language that has started to be explored in television. But I feel like video horror games are very much, like, just can't shake Resident Evil. Right, you know, rightfully so in a lot of ways, right? Resident Evil, very influential. But it's interesting to see something trying to explore a slightly different take on that genre than you often see.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to keep playing, and it's a short enough experience. I'm over here like, yes, only a 6 or 7 hour experience.
Yeah.
Maybe I will beat Emma in games finished next year.
Oh, no.
Here's my chance to get started. But I'm interested. It'll be an interesting. It's not the type of game that I don't play a lot of horror games. It's not the type of game I typically play. So we'll see if it scares me.
Yeah.
Are you ready to mash?
I'm ready to bounce some ideas off each other.
Oh God.
Oh.
That's so embarrassing. Okay, go ahead, bounce some ideas.
Oh, no, I didn't mean it.
You said you were ready.
I didn't. Oh no. Alright, so, no, okay. Alright.
Okay.
So,
alright.
You live in the city, right? You've got some bros and stuff, right? Like bros, you know, like buddies.
I gotcha. Bros, buddies.
And one day, one of your bros gets this letter, and it turns out he's actually, like, from a rural part outside the city. Like, that's where he was born, and he moved into the city, you know, when he was, like, you know, an adolescent.
Country boy. Got it.
Yeah. And it says, like, oh, you need to come home. And there's not very much explanation there. And he's like, I don't know, I'm kind of nervous to go home.
He got a letter?
Yeah, he got a letter, an email, text, something, some sort of thing.
Okay.
Some sort of correspondence.
Okay.
And he's like, oh, I don't know, I haven't been home in a while. Would my bros please come with me?
Okay.
To my house, to my...
It sounds like Final Fantasy 15.
Rural,
go ahead.
To my rural home. So you and your orthodox, your comedy, and your cool bro.
Which one is the farm boy?
The farm boy is the cool one.
Okay.
Yeah. You're the
right. He
orthodox
still wears
one.
Plaid, but in like a hip way.
Then the other one's the comedy one, and you go to his rural home all together.
Okay.
Only to get into like spooky hijinks. You know,
like what kind of spooky hijinks? I need a little more.
I think we could go like whole like B-mo movie horror vibes. You know, like you're just like some city bros, and you're in this rural haunted sort of scary village,
right?
But you're still sort of bouncing off each other like bros, you know.
I can't believe you just said bouncing off each other like bros.
How many times did I say bros in the last like 2 minutes?
Can you talk to me about the visual style? Both of these games have sort of iconic might be too strong, right? But iconic visual styles.
Sure. I think you do something where it's pretty standard most of the time, but then during, like, really scary experiences, maybe the art style could sort of break down into more of something sketchy, you know?
Okay.
To sort of visually symbolize the horror of what's going on, like the panic.
Sure. Mundaun does have like a fear meter, so we could do something like that here. It's interesting. Interesting idea. I'm worried about the kind of, because like the urban versus rural dynamic involves a politicization sometimes, politics. Is this game going to be political?
No. Well, you could do something, and this is getting a little bit Resident Evil-y with it, is some, like, city corporation is, like, doing something in this town, right?
Okay, that's
so a lot
good.
of
That's
the
in the
horror
Bouncer.
is more, like, government created.
Capitalism is the real Resident Evil.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, and then what's gameplay like? Putting this all on you.
Yeah, you're really putting this all on me. Where's your ideas, Madelyn?
I have no idea.
Where's your side? Where's your side of this?
There is no side.
Yeah. Okay, I think that this again is very Resident Evil-y.
I can't believe that you're just designing a Resident Evil game here.
But, like, there's, like, smaller enemies that you and your bros, like, you can build up confidence. You're like, oh, this isn't so bad. I punch them, they go down. And then we start introducing, like, bigger or more non-touchable enemies, I guess, that you cannot fight off with your fists. So it sort of transfers from something that's more beat-em-up-y to something that's more stealthy, sneaky. Yeah, yeah.
It's interesting. Can I play as the 3 different bros?
I think in this one you just have to be one of them.
Okay.
Or maybe we could make, like, 3 different campaigns if they get split up over the course of the story. Okay. If we have, like, keep it a relatively short experience so that each one of those is pretty short.
Okay. I'm interested in that. How's the interaction between cutscene and gameplay? What's that like?
Why do you keep asking me questions?
I don't know, I'm just interviewing
and not
you.
contributing anything?
I felt like my questions were contributing something, to be honest.
Well, tech has evolved so far. I don't think there need to be separate cutscenes. You can still make it look good even in engine. So you're always moving around while, like, your bros are doing their stuff around you.
I was just wondering about the
Final Fantasy 15 style, you might say.
Well, I was wondering about the idea of like a gothic. Maybe not gothic exactly. Not like goth, but like
yes, gothic cutscenes.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I don't know. Just like it's trying to take the hand drawn of Mundaun and like slap some kind of style on the cutscenes, so it feels like.
Oh, so the cutscenes look different than the gameplay. Yes.
I realize that's kind of anti the aesthetic of the Bouncer, but.
Maybe we could have, like, chapter breaks, like, between, like, situations, and they have, like, an intro of some sort. Yeah. Maybe telling some sort of story about whatever monster they're going to encounter that's sort of in, like, a... Yeah. Sketchy style. Okay. I like that. I feel like this is good. This could be good. Yeah. I am always down for the idea of inserting bros into, of course you are, any sort of story, any sort of bros. They don't have to be literal bros. Why did they end up having to go back to what was I know that there was no, it's just like, come home. I don't know, he got like a mysterious message that was very vague. He was too scared to go by himself, because he hadn't been back, and like, maybe he ran away from home to the city, and this is like his first call from home in like 10 years, But then he just wouldn't go back. I need enough of a hook. What do you mean? Well, if you got your first call from home in like 10 years, why wouldn't you go back? Because he wouldn't pick up the phone. He'd be like, what's this number? Unknown number. This is a telemarketer. Well, maybe he still has like phone numbers saved just in case they ever try to get in touch with them. They left on bad terms, right? Somebody called him about his extended warranty and he said, I've got to go home. No, like they left on bad terms, right? And I can't believe you're making me flesh out this story right now. But like, he still cares about his family, so he doesn't like delete them from his phone, and then he gets like a call from like mom or whatever. Like, I don't
Maybe
it's the dramatic
maybe he didn't
of it.
run away from home. Maybe they sent him away from home.
Like, banished him.
Well, that's sort of how he felt, but he gets the call that's like, I'll finally explain why we sent you to boarding school with your bros.
I don't know. That's so specific. I like it being vague.
Okay, you're right. Yeah, you're right. So this is why I'm having you plan the game, because I'm going to come in and ruin it.
Exactly.
With my specific and clear ideas.
Yes.
Just trying to deal with the plot holes.
There's no plot hole to that.
The plot hole is the city boy would
also,
never pick up his phone.
it doesn't have to be a call. It could be an email.
You're right. I know. I'm just kidding. I was just making a joke about telemarketers. He's like, this is a spoofed call. And in the end, it was a spoofed call. He gets there, his mom's like, I didn't call you.
I just think this family's not there.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
I think is the key.
The key.
The key, you might say.
Yeah. I think this could be good. Maybe.
There's something there.
There's something there. Some rural broing around.
Yeah.
Well, listeners, have you ever had a fun time in the countryside with your bros? Or abandoned your job at a bar to rescue someone with your bros? Or drawn something that you thought was going to be easy to draw, but then spent 6 years of your life drawing it because you decided it should be a game? Do you have fond memories of the Bouncer or any other kind of games of that era, or games of any like cross-generation time? Or any thoughts at all on the episode? If you do, you should hit us up on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Talk This Podcast. You can also visit our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can read all about the show, check out the games in the hat Emma's about to pull from for 2 weeks from now, and read our blog featuring long-running series, Clickbait Boyfriend, and Split Screen. If only I could have Clickbait Boyfriend play the Bouncer.
You're right. That would be a good addition to the Clickbait Boyfriend.
If only.
Tangentially, you know.
You know, I did take a lot of notes on his Final Fantasy VII Remake quotes, and then I never did it.
Maybe you should go back to the Final Fantasies. Nomura did a lot of the character designs for those. So.
Maybe I should. If you have thoughts on where the blog should go in 2022, listeners, hit us up on social media. But most importantly, if you enjoy the show, you should subscribe. We are on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, Pandora Podcasts, online and on the app, Overcast, Pocket Casts, anywhere that you can find podcasts, you can find Talk This. I've totally lost track of where we are in the loop, but I think it's your side quest.
Yes, because you did the Cozy Games one.
I did.
And then we had our special episode, then we had this, and now it is my turn.
What do you think your side quest is going to be on?
I don't have an idea yet.
It'll be great. But what, Emma, surely you do have an idea of what we're going to be talking about in 2 weeks.
Yes. For our old game, we will be talking about Rhythm Heaven.
Nice, fun, groovy. Groovy games will be my next side quest.
And for our new game, we're talking about Guardians of the Galaxy.
Nice. Basically the same game.
I wonder if there is a Rhythm Heaven that you can play.
We'll have to find out, because I don't think I'm going to be buying Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
So, we'll see.
It's going to become more and more challenging for you as there's more and more console exclusives.
Oh, is Guardians of the Galaxy PS5 only?
I'm not sure.
Well, this is going to be interesting.
I was just thinking generally.
I know. I feel like our old games are now at the point where it's like they're solidly in this like PS2 middle ground a lot of the time that I can't play. And now the new games, I'm going to have to get a PS5.
Yuffie's got the shuriken to your throat. She says, buy a PS5.
I'll put Clickbait Boyfriend. I'll be like, here's your job for January. I will work and you will try to buy us a PS5.
That is pretty much work, you know?
I know. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Pay him a stipend.
Yeah.
He can use it occasionally.
Yeah. That is his stipend. He can use it occasionally.
Yes. Well, listeners, thanks for tuning into the show. We'll see you again next week for the side quest. Emma, do you have an outro?
This week I hope that you are only summoned back to your rural hometown for fun and festive reasons.